of pseudo-legendary Pokemon! Or, I guess I should say I'm sick of them being dragons. As a quick refresher, a pseudo-legendary Pokemon is a fan term referring to Pokemon that are the final form of a 3-stage line, in the slow experience group, and have a base stat total of exactly 600. Every generation has introduced at least one, and in the first 3 we got 4. Dragonite, Tyranitar, Salamence, and Metagross. Dragonite and Salamence are both dragon flying, but Tyranitar and Metagross have totally unique dual typings, resulting in 6 types represented across only 4 Pokemon. But every pseudo since then, 6 generations later, has been dragon type. Some of their secondary typings have allowed for more type representation, but after all this time, almost half of all types have never been found on a pseudo-legendary Pokemon. I'm gonna fix that. Today I'll be selecting Pokemon that I think best fit as pseudo-legendary Pokemon, specifically in order to cover the 8 types that are not represented. These Pokemon will not meet all of the criteria for being pseudo-legends, because if they did, they would already be pseudo-legends. But there are 2 things that they must do. First, they must be the final form of a 3-stage line that does not branch. If I'm choosing whether Gallade or Gardevoir is the pseudo, it's just gonna get complicated. And second, they have to fit the vibe of a pseudo-legend, summarized as big mythical monster. They don't have to be scary. Dragonite and Goodra are not scary, they're actually quite cute, but the Pokemon I pick still have to be imposing like they are. In other words, large. Sorry, Jumpluff fans. Too small. Let's start with Bug, which has several 3-stage lines, but so many are very small. Butterfree, Beedrill, Vivian, Orbeetle, and Leavanny are all under 4 feet tall. Then there are some Bug Pokemon that do fit the pseudo-legend look and size. Yanmega, Golisopod, Araquanid, and Scizor are excellent examples, but they only have 2 stages. And even if Scizor had a 3rd, it's a branched line with Cleavor. But thankfully, we do have 2 candidates that still fit. The first is Scolipede. Thanks to Venipede and Whirlipede, it has the 3-stage evolution line covered, and it absolutely nails large and imposing. It is over 8 feet tall, and it's a cool, angry bug. It feels like it could be inspired by a bug like Kaiju, which is a huge perk since multiple pseudo-legendary Pokemon are at least partially inspired by Kaiju. Speaking of bug Kaijus, Volcarona would be the perfect fit for a Mothra-inspired pseudo-legend, but it only has 2 stages. I really wish they'd made a middle stage between Larvesta and Volcarona, and then buffed Volcarona's stats to make it the second Unova pseudo-legend alongside Hydreigon, but oh well. The second candidate is Vikavolt. With Grubbin and Charjabug before it, that gives it 3 stages, and it certainly looks fearsome enough to qualify. Vikavolt has a problem though. Its size is deceptive. Vikavolt is 4'11", same as Salamence, but Salamence's height is measured from its feet to its head, not tail to head, whereas Vikavolt is clearly measured jaws to butt, meaning half its length is only its mandibles. It's simply way too small, and thus Scolipede is a better fitting bug-type pseudo-legend. Now, Scolipede is bug poison type, which means it covers both bug and poison, but I'm gonna still do a separate Pokemon for the poison section. I don't have to, but I'm going to because it's fun.
Ha-ha! It is I, Garantia Boy, and I need your advice. How do I learn to speak a new language?
Oh, interesting. Why do you ask?
I've been taking Spanish classes at the Hideout, but they're only teaching us phrases like Dame todo tu dinero and El equipo rocket despega de nuevo.
Ah, well then I suggest Mondly, the sponsor of today's video. Right now they're offering an insane 96% off lifetime access during their Black Friday sale at mondly.app/MandJTV. Mondly is in the top 5 language learning apps worldwide with over 120 million users, teaching them 41 different languages. It focuses on practical content you can use in your daily life, and with the help of a speech recognition chatbot, you can get real-time feedback to improve your pronunciation.
Ooh, muy bien! I'd love to learn without having to go to specific classes.
Oh, it's even more convenient than that. Mondly has a hands-free mode so you can practice while you're doing other things like cooking or laundry, and all of the vocal recordings are from native speakers, so you know you're hearing the right stuff.
And you said I can get lifetime access for 96% off?
For a limited time, yes, 96% off all of the languages on Mondly at mondly.app/MandJTV, linked in the description below.
Well, I'm gonna get that at once. Gracias, mi amigo. Adios.
Next is Electric, which has a ton of 3-stage lines. Both forms of Raichu are way too small, as is Ampharos, only being 4'7", standing upright. Electros is listed at 6'11", but that is its length, which when extended out, isn't actually that long, and results in a pretty small Pokemon. For comparison, Gyarados is triple Electros' length. But then we actually have several options that could work. Alolan Golem, Luxray, Magnezone, and Electivire. Alolan Golem is a strange, bearded creature, but at 5'7" and being almost as wide as it is tall, it's actually quite big next to a person. Magnezone is listed at only 3'11", but due to being far wider than it is tall, it is definitely big enough to carry a person, and at least according to the BDSP Pokedex, looks about the same size as Metagross. Basically, when I'm looking for a Pseudo, I want them to
give me one of those large enough to ride.
Then Electivire is 5'11", easily big enough, even though some of that height is tied up in its antenna. Luxray's a bit of a squeaky wheel though. It's quadruped and 4'7", only a little shorter than Salaman's, but most of its height is chewed up by its mane. In BDSP and Scarlet and Violet, it actually appears quite small, definitely not large enough for a full-grown person to ride on the back of. But then in the anime, Clement appears dwarfed by his Luxray, meaning it is easily rideable. Although anime sizes are to be taken with a garganicle's worth of salt. Selecting from these four though, there is a clear winner for me. Electivire. Alolan Golem being a regional form complicates things. I know Goodra has regional forms, but like, Golem I'm not as sure works. I feel like it probably could, but like, Alolan Golem's beard is just so stupid. And as mentioned, Luxray's size is a concern. Magnezone would be very similar to Metagross, but it's nowhere near as monstrous. Magnezone seems to just kind of like hang out and do electromagnetism. Metagross is like pinning prey down and eating it with its mouth, like, I think Electivire is the best candidate due to its size, being the biggest of the group, and being the most mythological. It's believed to be partially based on two major mythical creatures, the Yeti and the Oni, a quote, horned ogre that sometimes has powers of thunder and lightning, and often wore tiger skin loincloths, which are usually yellow with black stripes. So does that mean Electivire's whole body is a loincloth? But anyways, it's 3-stage, it's big, and it's based on myths. Get rid of the weird Electorizer trait evolution and buff Electivire's stats, and I think this is a very well-suited pseudo-legendary. And also, it's mammalian, and we should have some mammalian pseudo-legends. There's plenty of mythical mammals, like King Kong, which is more of a kaiju than like a myth, but like still. Next is Fairy, which is basically the non-dragon myth type. So there should be tons of great options. There aren't. Most fairy-type Pokemon are generally cute. And as I said, that's fine. Dragonite and Goodra are cute. But the problem is that these cute fairy types are also very small, which I guess fits with like actual fairies. They're very tiny little ladies. But it causes problems here. Clefable's only 4'3", Florges is only 3'7", Wigglytuff's only 3'3", Azumarill's only 2'7", and Tinkaton's only 2'4". I'm not counting its hammer. Then Gardevoir is part of a branching line, which I'm excluding, but even if I wasn't, I feel it looks too much like a person.
Smash.
Generally, humanoid shapes are fine. 2 arms, 2 legs, that's plenty of pseudos, whatever. But I still want Pokemon that are beasts. So like Electivire, 2 arms, 2 legs, big monster. Gardevoir, wearing a dress. Togekiss would be great, clearly being reminiscent of a mythical fairy, and its height of 4'11" could make it plenty big if measured like Salamence. But like Vikavolt, it's not. In the BDSP Pokedex, Togekiss is nowhere near as tall as the under 5 foot tall player character, indicating its height is measured nose to tail. This could be disqualifying. Primarina's 5'11" long and clearly based on mythical mermaids, but it's a starter. And I'm really not gonna wanna choose those. Like, plenty of them have the looks and size to be pseudos, but I'd have to steal them from the starter category and put them in pseudo, and I just don't wanna do that. So all we have left are Hatterene and Grimmsnarl. Hatterene is almost 7 feet tall, but it's very human-like. I guess technically it's like a tiny little thing, and then the rest of it is like weird hair, but it is meant to look like a full-grown person. And while Grimmsnarl is a troll goblin beast, which is perfect, it's only 4'11" standing upright, and that includes its ears. No choice is ideal, but I'm going with Grimmsnarl. Togekiss is just simply not big enough, and as for Grimmsnarl and Hatterene, in the games they actually appear to look each other in the eyes, showing how much of Hatterene's height is from its hat. Grimmsnarl, as I said, is also a perfect mythical beast, being a goblin troll ogre thing. If it was a foot taller, the decision would have been so easy, but hey, at least it's only a little shorter than Kammo-o. Next is Fire. Charizard is easily the best starter option, literally already being a dragon in one of its forms, but alas, I'd prefer not to go the starter route. And as already discussed, if Volcarona had something between it and Larvesta, it would be awesome. Magmortar is a decent choice based on the mythical Karura, but it might be a bit too small, only 5'3", which would be okay, but I'd prefer bigger. Chandelure is far too small and also too object-like. Non-organic Pokemon are fine, clearly, Metagross exists, but they can't look too much like a specific object. Like, Metagross is a robot, but kind of like a robot spider thing. Chandelure is a chandelier. That's it. Talonflame is okay, but it's a bit small and looks just like regular birds of prey, which, to be clear, are very cool. They're just not mythical. Well, I guess the Thunderbird is a mythical bird of prey, but Talonflame's not making lightning. But my pick for the absolute best fire-type pseudo-legend is actually a Pokemon that doesn't count. It's Mega Houndoom. Regular Houndoom's only 4'7", but Mega Houndoom shoots up to 6'3". Even if you cut off its horns, based on my estimations, its head is still around 5 feet off the ground, which is a huge dog, very possible as a steed, if not for the spikes that would impale you if you sat on it. And obviously, it's as fearsome mythical beast as it gets. It's a hellhound with skeletal spikes coming out of its body. And as icing on the cake, the line is in the slow experience group, and Mega Houndoom has a base stat total of exactly 600. If you just made it so Mega Houndoom was a permanent evolution and changed nothing else, it would instantly count as a pseudo-legend. However, this would be creating a new species, and if I can't do that for Volcarona, I can't really do that for Houndoom. Even though it would be a smaller leap, a middle stage Volcarona Pokemon would need a whole new design, whereas Mega Houndoom would just need a name change. Could call it Hound Damnation. But thankfully, while not as perfect, there's still another really good choice for a fire-type pseudo-legend, Colossal. It is over 9 feet tall, and even if you remove its coal pile and arm spike, it still dwarfs the player character. Plus, its Bulbapedia page says Colossal appears to be a mix of a dinosaur or kaiju and a pile of coal. Kaiju, y'all, that's what we're going for here. Colossal is my fire-type pseudo with Volcarona and Mega Houndoom as honorable mentions. Side note, I may mention other megas that could work as pseudos if turned into permanent evolutions, but only if I think they fit super perfectly. For example, I didn't mention Mega Manectric and Electric because it doesn't feel mythical enough, really just being a dog stuck in a construction paper mountain range. And I won't talk about Mega Lopunny and Normal because it is a bunny woman wearing yoga pants.
Would this make me a furry if I said Smash?
They're just not the right vibes. Next is another starter type, Grass. Torterra and Venusaur stand out to me as excellent options, but alas, they are not meant to be. Let's rapid fire eliminate some. Bellossom and Vileplume are branched evolutions and too small anyways. Hydrapple is not too small, but it is another branched line. Jumpluff, Shiftry, Zarina, Arboliva, Leavanny, and Roserade are too small, too person-like, or both. Ludicolo's right on the edge of the height range, but its vibe isn't really what I'm going for. I love Ludicolo as much as anyone, but it's hard for me to picture a fearsome pseudo-legendary that won't stop dancing. And then we have another Mega Houndoom situation. If Mega Abomasnow was a permanent evolution, this is the instant easy pick. It's monstrous, huge, in the slow experience group, and only 6 points shy of the 600 base stat total. And it's definitely based on a mythical creature. The Abama in its name comes not from the president, but from Abominable Snowman, another name for a Yeti. Make it a permanent evolution, give it 6 more base points, and change its name to, I don't know, Yetri? And there's your grass type Pseudo, but sadly I cannot count it, so the best remaining option is Victory Bell. It's 5'7", quite large considering no horns or similar features are skewing that height number, and it is certainly fearsome. I've discussed it in Dex entry videos, but it literally melts people. And while I couldn't find any myths about pitcher plants, what it's based on, man-eating plants are certainly a recurring thing in stories and media, like Little Shop of Horrors. That plant is kind of a kaiju. Next we have normal, and I'm gonna start by eliminating all the regional birds. They're way too similar to regular birds and generally not big enough. Corviknight is an exception, but it is not a normal type. Wigglytuff and Arboliva are out for reasons I discussed earlier, then Porygon Z is out for its size. Blissey is under 5 feet tall, and despite its width, I think it's just simply too friendly looking. Dragonite is cute, but you can make it look mean. I feel like you can make Blissey look mean, but it's not easy. Exploud and Obstagoon both have the look, but they're only around 5 feet tall. This would be good enough for other types, but normal is simply too competitive. That's because of the final two candidates, Ursaluna and Slaking. Ursaluna is 7'10", an absolutely huge creature, and then it gets even taller in its Blood Moon form, standing on its hind legs and reaching 8'10". Both forms are clearly fearsome enough, and the Blood Moon form could be partially based on an Oni-kuma, which are, quote, bears that have transformed into yokai after living for an exceptionally long time. Oni-kuma are known to walk on 2 legs and continue to grow, reaching sizes much larger than even the largest natural bears. Meanwhile, Slaking is famous for being one of the Pokemon most commonly mistaken to be pseudo-legendary, alongside Haxorus. It meets the experience group and 3-stage requirements, but it's actually too strong to be a pseudo, with a base stat total of 670. This is to offset its harmful ability, Truant. Aesthetically, it's literally a 6'7" sloth-like version of King Kong. It is super easy to find fan art of a Pokemon version of Godzilla vs. Kong with Tyranitar and Slaking. Both Ursaluna and Slaking are strong contenders, but I'm giving it to Slaking. It's more kaiju-like, it's already in the slow experience group, and it doesn't have the messiness of an alternate form that also does not connect evolutionarily. That's weird, and I don't want to touch it. Just lower its stats, get rid of Truant, and there's your King Kong pseudo-legend. Next is Poison, which as I mentioned, I'm still gonna cover despite already picking both Scolipede and Victory Bell. Unfortunately, Poison's pickings are paltry. I already eliminated Beedrill during Bug and Roserade during Grass, and Dustox and Vileplume are both small and in branched lines. Venusaur is awesome, but a starter. Nidoqueen and Nidoking appear like amazing options, definitely aesthetically, but Nidoqueen is only 4'3", and Nidoking is only 4'7", which is still insane to me. They look like they should be huge. They definitely made Nidoking a lot bigger in the anime. This leaves us with only 2 options, Crobat and Gengar. In regards to size, Crobat is 5'11", but some of that height is its wings, I'm pretty sure. It looks sufficiently huge in the BDSP Pokedex though, so its size is certainly not a problem. Gengar's only 4'11", but due to its generally spherical shape, it also looks plenty large next to the player character. And fearsomeness is not a concern for either of them. Or at least, they're on equal footing. They're both purple round things with pointy ears, mean eyes, and toothy mouths. As for mythicality, Gengar gets a slight edge due to potentially being partially based on Oni, and also just like ghosts in general. Crobat is pretty much only based on bats, maybe vampires, but really just vampire bats. It is an extremely close call, and I think both could work, but I'm giving the edge to Crobat. Its stats are closer to 600, which isn't a big deal, but it can help break the tie. But more importantly for me is how they look in those BDSP Dex screens. Crobat's body isn't as big as Gengar's, but with those 4 wings, its silhouette feels more imposing and crucially more like a mythical creature, even if it technically isn't. Gengar could definitely work though. I just feel like giant monster bat better fits the vibe of a pseudo-legend than round, mean demon ghost. Finally, water. Feraligatr and Blastoise are strong starter contenders, but alas, I'm not looking at starters. And actually, kind of surprisingly, despite water being the most populous type, removing the starters seriously cuts down our options. Poliwrath and Politoed are part of a branching line and too small anyways. As mentioned before, Azumarill is way too small and Ludicolo is still too silly. To be perfectly clear, we respect silly. We just don't make them pseudos. Mega Gyarados is certainly mythical and fearsome, but Gyarados doesn't really work as a middle evolution in my opinion, the same way that Houndoom and Abomasnow do. Mega Sharpedo's a better option, but its stats are low and it isn't inspired by a mythical beast like Mega Houndoom and Abomasnow are. But like, neither Gyarados nor Sharpedo will really count anyways. This leaves us with 3 options: Seismitoad, Walrein, and Kingdra. Seismitoad is 4'11", which is a bit shorter than I expected, actually. Walrein is only 4'7", but with it being down on its belly, essentially, it's actually quite large. Kingdra's up at 5'11", but its horns and skinniness make it appear smaller than that. They all feel about equal in the fearsomeness factor for me, being imposing, but not like overly terrifying. However, when we move to mythicality, a stronger contender emerges. At first, they all seem to be based on just regular animals. Seismitoad is based on the Japanese common toad, Walrein is based on walruses, and Kingdra is a seahorse. But the Japanese word for seahorse, Tatsu no Otoshigo, translates to illegitimate child of a dragon, taken from a myth that seahorses eventually become dragons if they live long enough. That's why Kingdra is a dragon type, and as much as I hate to say it, that makes it the winner. Look, I didn't want to add any more dragons, but when you're picking Pokemon from the mostly dragon group, and one of your closely contested options is a dragon, it fits best. But hey, pretty impressive that of the 8 Pokemon I picked, only one of them was a dragon, right? Thanks so much for watching, and if you liked this video, you will definitely enjoy my video where I selected the perfect starter Pokemon for each of the non-starter types. And despite it both being 3-stage requirements, the choices are very different.